everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to... Well, I was like, I need to discuss what's happened at Masters Reykjavik. And the thing is, there's so much. So I'm gonna do this in the good old-fashioned YouTube style. We're gonna do a react video. So today, channeling 2013 energy, we're gonna be reacting to the double elimination bracket at Masters Reykjavik so far. There's a lot. Okay, I should probably get the bracket up. Okay, the Wikipedia. So everything started out normal. G2 versus Zeta Division. Okay, G2 top seed from EMEA. Sure, we expect them to do best. 2-0. Okay, kind of standard. Loud versus Team Liquid was the first major what the fuck from me, because so I didn't actually watch this game because I assumed naively that it was just like, yeah, Team Liquid had it. And actually we filmed our episode of Daring Minds last week and literally said, like, Team Liquid, they have so much veteranship, so much LAN experience, they're not going to be phased. Like, against Loud, it's gonna be fine. No, 2-1. So that was the first what the fuck. PaperX versus DRX. DRX had been doing really solidly in the competition so far, had not lost a map yet, so I expected DRX to win that game, and they did. The Guard versus Optic was definitely the game that I thought was going to be the absolute linchpin for both of these teams coming into it, because the Guard had a lot to prove in that they are basically a rookie team for the most part. Very few of them have any LAN experience, anything like that. And so even though they've proved themselves to be arguably the best fundamentally skilled team in North America and have so much talent on this roster, this was really where it was going to get real for them, because coming straight into the bracket, they didn't have time in the group stage to warm up because they had the bye into the bracket. We didn't really know what to expect. Optic had their time to warm up and improve. You know, they had their upset where they'd lost to Xerxia, and then they had made their way like through, come back, had the comeback, got into the upper bracket. You know, they had that warm up time. Now obviously the Guard and Optic both played in the upper bracket finals and the grand finals of NAVCT. And this was like, oh my god, these two teams are just going to become major rivals now. Optic winning that game didn't surprise me too much, but the fact that it was a 2-1 I think was a really solid showing. Looking down into lower bracket round 1, Zeta Division versus Team Liquid. Interesting one. So Team Liquid basically kind of flopped when they got into the bracket, which I, at this point, thought that Team Liquid would have had a solid chance of making it quite far in the bracket and having that EMEA representation go really far, but actually it was the total opposite. Zeta Division have looked incredibly strong. They've really represented Japan incredibly well, and this is something that I've spoken about as well. You know, Zeta Division are this team that relinquished their opportunity to go to Champions. They dropped out of APAC LCQs so that they could rebuild the roster and start to restructure and look to the future. Now that is a hugely risky move to make, and in their case, it looks like it is really paying off. So Zeta Division, I am watching this team with keen eyes because holy shit, they are impressing me. And then PaperX beating the Guard 2-0. Okay, so PaperX, yes, they have been an impressive team in the past. Like, people already like this team. I'm already fond of this team. But for, yeah, a so-called minor region team to defeat the best team in North America, ostensibly, that is insane. I mean, the Guard obviously heartbroken to have gone home, but again, just these smaller regions proving how much they are worth and that you cannot underestimate them in this bracket. I am living for it. So going back up to the upper bracket, into the upper bracket semifinals, we have G2 versus Loud. Once again, Loud just defeating EMEA teams. This is nuts. I mean, I love it. It is hilarious in a sense. Like, as a viewer, you know, I love it. I have my, you know, everyone knows that I'm a big NA fan and whatever, but I don't really have a connection to any of the regions in the sense of like, I'm going to be really upset or really happy if a particular region wins a particular event. I just want good Valorant, right? And so I love upset stories, I love underdog stories, and this is exactly what that is. Loud have taken Team Liquid, or helped take Team Liquid off the map. They have sent G2 back down into the lower bracket. You know, it is crazy what this team are doing. DRX versus Optic, this is the first game that DRX lost, so DRX go down into the lower bracket where we are going to follow now, where we get DRX versus Zeta Division. Again, another instance where you cannot underestimate these smaller region teams because Zeta Division wiped DRX off the map, a 2-1 to them, and this is blowing everyone's minds. G2 have to go into their first lower bracket game against Paper X. Again, you'd think that this is a very experienced team. They're coming from one of the major regions. Like, okay, they had a bit of a hiccup in the upper bracket, but no. No, Paper X 2-0'd them. So Paper X 2-0'd the Guard, and then 2-0'd G2 Esports. What is this? So the games that are upcoming are Loud versus Optic and Zeta Division versus Paper X. Now, I am just like, in my head, I'm like, what if we get like a Loud Zeta Division or a Loud Paper X grand final? Wouldn't that be insane? That would be the coolest thing ever. So Loud versus Optic. Oh man, I don't even know what to think. I don't even... You know what? I'm not going to make predictions. And that might piss some people off because I think people will probably want me to. But I think that Optic have looked really strong, but they've had a number of 2-0s. You know, they started off in this event not winning their first game, and they've had to come back from that. And they're like putting in the work, and they're really, you know, they're putting those wins in, but they're kind of only just putting those wins in. Whereas Loud so far have defeated these two really big, you know, EMEA heavy hitters, and it has felt like they just haven't had to have fought as hard. So I could see Loud beating Optic. It's like, I said in this episode of Daring Minds the other day that if Optic beat the Guard, then Optic will probably win the whole thing. And even before the event started, I've been saying that Optic were my favorite to win the whole thing. But I did not anticipate these kinds of upsets. Oh my god. And then Zeta Division versus Paper X. How do you even pick that? I mean, Paper X have had the more definitive wins. Oh my god. I don't want either of them to be in the lower bracket. Fuck. So DRX beat Paper X, and then Zeta Division beat DRX. So from that, we could say that Zeta Division are going to win, but Paper X have had like the more dominant wins than Zeta Division. Oh my god. I actually don't... Okay, I'm going to say... Oh, fuck, because I'm going to be wrong. Zeta Division beat Paper X, and Optic beat Loud. So then it's Zeta Division versus Loud in the lower bracket finals. And I want to say Zeta Division win that, but there's something telling me that Loud would. Oh my god! But then if it's Loud versus Optic Gaming in the grand finals again, Loud will win. I feel like I've seen this so many times at this point where like the two teams that face each other in the upper bracket finals, if they are the two teams that come together in the grand finals, the score switches. Oh my god. What I can say about Masters Reykjavik, okay. This has been a fucking crazy event. And one of the really cool things about it is the fact that we are seeing these quote unquote smaller regions do so much against the big regions. Now, I know that there is that caveat in EMEA, the fact that FPX aren't there and that Fnatic had to play with stand-ins and whatever. So yes, they did have a little bit of a disadvantage from that perspective. But in a sense, that's almost not an excuse, because it's like, not that it's not an excuse for those teams. You know, it is an excuse for Fnatic. It is an excuse for FPX, but that's not an excuse for G2 or Liquid. And if this is a major region that is supposedly better and stronger than all these minor regions, then all of the teams that go from that major region should be good enough to defeat those minor regions. And the fact is they haven't been. Now, Team Liquid, because they didn't actually qualify, I'll give them a little bit more leeway, but G2, this is not what I expected from G2. As for the NA teams, I think that NA have probably gone per expectation so far. The fact that the Guard, yes, yes, they're an incredible team, but have basically no LAN experience. Like, did you really expect them to do amazingly at their first LAN? No, this was always going to be way more of a learning process for them than it was actually about winning the event. And I'm sure the players really wanted to win the event, but I think realistically that probably was never going to happen. Optic have, I think, during the NA playoffs especially, really showed the graph that they put in to adapt on their own strategies to constantly improve and be able to push themselves forward. And that is quite representative of what we've seen so far at Masters Reykjavik for them. As to whether or not that is going to be enough to win the event remains to be seen, and I don't necessarily know which way that's going to be yet. But I think that NA have done a bit more to expectation than EMEA have. Also consider the fact that EMEA had more teams going than NA, so they had more opportunity to succeed. I think that EMEA have been kind of a disappointment at this event. I think that part of the reason that, you know, we get so many teams from different regions who have made it so far in the event comes down to the fact that we are in, or the esport has only ever existed during this COVID era, which means that there aren't advantages that are given to North America and EMEA that you see in other esports. You know, for example, in certain esports, you might have like a LAN league or something in those regions, or more investment in them, and you know, big orgs want to invest in buying teams from those regions, and therefore they pay more into it. I think the fact that everyone's kind of been on a sort of level playing field has meant that in a lot of cases, the same resources are available in different places. Now, it is true, of course, that there are bigger organizations in the West than there are in a lot of these other regions. And therefore, those players are probably making a lot more money and whatever. But as far as like the opportunities to actually get experience within the leagues in which they play, that is all very similar. I think also Valorant is still a very young game, and there's a lot of trying to figure out. And I think that a lot of, you know, even still, like, there are a lot of non-endemic players in NA and EMEA. They've come from other games, like be that Counter-Strike or whatever it is. And so they've come with this, I don't know, vision from a different sort of environment, whereas there are some more endemic players, I think, over in a lot of the other smaller teams, and so they were kind of like, they've been forged in the flames of Valorant, and maybe while their approach to the game might be slightly different to what we see in those big regions, that doesn't necessarily mean that approach is wrong. I am very curious because it usually takes other esports quite a while to get to a point where the smaller regions play as well on an international stage as the bigger regions. I'm curious to see if in Valorant this continues, or if as we kind of leave this COVID era, if it's something that drops off and actually EMEA and NA start to take off a little bit more and leave others behind. Right now, I'm not convinced that that's gonna happen anytime soon, just because I think there is such sheer skill on a lot of these smaller region teams that is just pushing them forward so much. I think also it's really nice that there is so much encouragement and belief from the audience and the fan base as well, who are really rallying behind these teams, because it means that people aren't really coming into these events with this assumption that the only good players are the players from North America or the players from Europe. Like, people know that there is so much value in the other regions, and so it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that sense. I think that that can kind of work against those regions in other esports. Either way, I think that this has been an absolutely insane event. As for shattering expectations and setting the expectations going into stage 2, I think that there are going to be a lot of teams who are going to have to really consider how it is they're approaching the way that, you know, they play and train, and you know, what it is they're going to do. Are they going to bring in fresh new ideas? Because consider the fact that this is all about getting points to go forward into champions, right? And yeah, these teams want to make it to champs. They need to perform. There's only one more Masters event after this before Champions comes around. So there is not a ton of time. Like, stage 2 has to be the time to fix this shit. And these teams that have come from the smaller regions that have caused all these upsets, they are going to be heading into stage 2 with so much confidence and like just feeling like they are carrying the world on their shoulders. So honestly, I am kind of blown away by this event. It has been so much fun, and it's not not even over. So who the frick knows what's going to happen in the last 4 games, because I sure as fuck don't. But yeah, let me know what has been the biggest surprise to you guys, what teams you're rooting for. Tell me in the comments, because I'm genuinely super curious to know what everyone's thoughts are on this bracket so far. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.